Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here. So welcome to this webinar, Resistance in Palestine, discussion with Al'Abudi, recently released from Israeli jails and human rights defenders. Before starting the discussion, I will give you some technical stuff advices. So we have the chance to have a translation to French and Dutch. So for those who have the world map, you click on it and you can choose French for French and German flag for Dutch, because apparently there is no Dutch in the proposal of Zoom, which I hope will change. We have also a chat where you can send comments or links related to what we are talking about, say hi. And then there is also a Q&A I think we had a technical stuff. I would say that that's direct. uh, so welcome back, Fina. Yeah, I think I said almost everything regarding the technical stuff. So Q&A, chat,
Okay, it looks like Fiona has some connection problems. If she's back, we'll hear it. So she explained for the translation, you have to click on the flag and then you will get translation in either French or Dutch. If there's any questions, you can put them in the chat and then we'll try to answer them in the discussion. And that's the most important thing. Also, if you have some interesting links, you can also put them in the chat. And Nikki from Intel Globalized Solidarity, she will also put some interesting links in the chat, so you can also have a look at that. And so for the translation, you have to click on a globe, not on a flag. Okay, so welcome to this conversation with Al'Abudi. Ubay is he's Palestinian and he was recently released from prison. He's also the director of the Bisson Center, and he will tell you more about that in a little bit. This conversation is organized by Intel Globalized Solidarity, but also with our partners. And Apolline and Heidi will present those to you. So we'll have a short introduction of who is organizing this webinar, and then we'll have a conversation with Ubay. To begin with, we have a few questions prepared, so we'll ask them to Ubay. And then later we open the floor, or also during, if you have a question, if you think of something, put it in the chat. If it's relevant to the topic that we're already discussing, we'll discuss it immediately. If the question can wait a little bit, we'll discuss it in the second part when the floor is open to more questions. Okay, I invite first Apolline to present herself and her organization.
Yeah, hello everyone. First of all, sorry for my English. I'm French speaker, so I will do my best. I'm Apolline. I'm a master student in social transitions and innovations, but most of the time isn't spent on studying, to be honest. I'm one of the leaders of COMAC, the student movement of the Workers' Party of Belgium. COMAC is a movement of students who want to change the world. We fight for ecology, gender equality, education, freedom of Palestine, of course, and we struggle against racism, fascism, and all those others shits. Together with Heather and other COMAC activists, we made a solidarity trip in July 2019. And we had the chance to meet Ubay at the Besant centers where he works. And we discussed a lot about how to help Palestine and the Palestinian situation.
Thank you, Apolline. Your English is perfect. Don't worry about it. I'm Heidi, Heide in Dutch. I'm a former member of COMAC, where I had many opportunities to learn about Palestine, but I also work on Palestine in my studies. I'm a political science student, and I write my thesis about Palestinian social reproduction as a resistance sphere, while I combining also studying Arabic. My link with Ubay is that he bought frozen pies for me when my boyfriend drops a heavy plank on my head during our solidarity trip in Palestine. So that's where Ubay and I we've met. And together with Apolline, I'm also made a video about Ubay and the Palestinian occupation at the moment that he was still in prison, to make awareness about the case of Ubay and many other political prisoners.
So I am Ruth, and I'm a member of Intel Palestine Brussels. So part of the big movement that Intel is, but based in Brussels and focusing on Palestine. If anyone, by the way, wants to join Intel or on Palestine issues and is based in Brussels, don't hesitate to contact us or me personally, because it would be great to have more enthusiastic people who work on Palestine issues. So myself, I went to Palestine in April 2019, and that's where I met Ubay. I also met some other Palestinian people, of course, and visited different parts of the country. And in September, October, there were 3 or 4 people that I met in Palestine who were arrested, and some of them are still in prison, and most of them Ubay also knows. So it was really a big shock to really have this personal connection with people who are currently or were in the last year imprisoned. So with Intel Palestine, we try to mobilize people to be aware of what is happening in Palestine, and we also try to make clear the connection between, for example, Belgian banks, European banks, and how they also have an effect on what is happening in Palestine. So we try to mobilize Belgian people on this issue.
Hello, since I have internet connection problem, which was not the case just before the streaming in Facebook Live, so that's the direct, I would say. So my name is Fiona. I'm working for Viva Salud. So we are a Belgian NGO promoting right to health and strongly believing that social movements are really important to have concrete change in the right to health of population. And so we are working with BISAN, Center for Research and Development, the organization Ubay is working with as a director. And so I know Ubay first because of work, but he also became a really good friend. The same for his wife and his 3 kids. And so I'm really happy today to be with Ubay and with Ruth and Apolline and Aid for this really interesting discussion, because every time I speak with Ubay, it gives me so much energy to fight and to continue the struggle for more social justice. So thank you, Ubay, to be with us. I will give you the floor for a short introduction of yourself and of the work of Bisan, which is super important. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for organizing this, and thank you everyone who has either come to Palestine in solidarity, has the flag behind him in solidarity, or has expressed an ethical position in this time of neoliberal fascism in Palestine, in the world, that's spreading around the world, and not exclusively also in Palestine. My name is Al'Aboudy, as you might have known. I am the Executive Director of Bisan Center for Research and Development. The center was established back in 1989 at the beginning of the first Intifada as a think tank for Palestinian progressives on trying to find creative solutions, creative means, creative methods that would progress our society into developing itself, developing its means and its emancipation. We pride ourselves of being critical. We try to not take things in granted, to question why are policies being implemented like this in the Palestinian community, what are effects of those policies, and we align ourselves with the poor and the marginalized. From this aspect, we find the connections with solidarity groups with Palestine around the world, with progressive organizations like Viva Salud, our main assets and main connections, and we take pride also in those connections. We believe that oppression everywhere is interlinked. I myself think that the works of Samir Amin, of analyzing capitalism on a global scale, analyzing oppression on a global scale, is very relevant to our context nowadays. And we as a center also think that the ideas of Samir Amin and of the World System School are also very relevant in analyzing not just the Palestinian context, but also the context of the world today of oppression, injustice, poverty, and marginalization. For us as a center, we try to work on different issues, especially working on creating alternative knowledge on development and how it's supposed to be in Palestine, and how to resist the neoliberal system of oppression, and how to also to change the society, change norms and habits that negatively affect and marginalize people in the society, even the Palestinian society itself, such as women, children, youth, etc. We also try to work and see ourselves as part of the social movement, the Palestinian Progressive Social Movement, and we work with CBOs, community-based organizations, we work with youth, we work with women groups on trying to create a social movement. This might be also part of, this is part of the program that we work with on Viva Salud, on the right to health. We work on the entire socioeconomic rights spectrum, and we see that the right to health is especially center stage right, and that can be something that tackles all the other rights also, because especially today in the age of the coronavirus pandemic, one of the most obvious things is that the intersections between having and dying with corona and your socioeconomic status, your ability to get medications, to get hospital care, the preparedness of the states, in each country on how to deal with the coronavirus, their spending on public health, etc. The Bisan Center also works as a part of the Palestinian civil society to work to defend Palestinian rights in land, in freedom, to try to expose the violations of the oppression on Palestine. بابا حبيبي في عندنا ناس بابا هون روح شوف ماما. This is my kid. The Bisan Center tries also to expose, as part of the Palestinian civil society, the violations to Palestinian human rights under occupation, not just from the occupation, but also from all the duty bearers to the Palestinian people, also the PA, the Palestinian Authority. Then we see also that the new liberal policies that are implemented by the Palestinian Authority go hand in hand with the occupation policies of marginalizing the people, impoverishing the people, and destroying their steadfastness on the ground. So this is, in short, what we do at Bisan and my work there.
Thank you, Ubay, also for being here. It's a great honor to talk with you and discuss plenty topics. So maybe the night of November 13 is a good entry point for our talk. If it's comfortable for you, feel free to share with us what happened that night.
So actually, at that night, I stayed worked at Bisan, and the night of 12th, the night before, I stayed and worked until late at night in Bisan. I was meeting with parts of the Palestinian social movement on especially the movement to end the monopoly of the telecommunications, or face the monopoly of the telecommunications company. I got home around 11 p.m. on the 12th. I was very tired. I didn't even see the kids. They were, of course, asleep then. I went directly and slept and told my wife I'm very tired, if she could bring me a glass of water after a long day. At 3 a.m., my wife woke me up and told me that the Israeli army is banging on the door. I got up and she actually went to the door and opened the door for the Israeli armies, because they were banging loudly, which woke up everyone at home. An Israeli intelligence officer came in and asked for my ID. I had misplaced my ID, so he asked for my US passport. He knew I have a US passport. I gave him my US passport. Once he took it, he, of course, he terrorized the house, the entire house, and then the entire building. Actually, one of my neighbors goes to work really late at night. He has a night shift. He was held in the staircase all night long until they got in and arrested me. This is something I knew after that. I told him what is the issue, and he told me that he wanted me to come with them. Of course, they did not put forward any orders to arrest or anything. I said goodbye to my wife, kids, and wore some some slippers. I didn't even have time to wear my shoes, and they took me outside my home. Once they took me outside the home, they put on me handcuffs. They searched me, put on me handcuffs, and got me in an Israeli Jeep. Before getting me inside the Israeli Jeep, they put blindfolds on my eyes. I was taken to an Israeli army camp. The blindfolds were not released on my eyes the entire trip, and I was handcuffed behind my backs. In the Israeli army camp, I think it was 20 minutes from my house. I live in the area of Kufr Aqab, which is technically inside East Jerusalem, but physically outside the wall, the apartheid wall that was built by the Israelis. In that camp, another maybe army officer identified me and they transferred me into a different jeep. So I suppose I was transferred from one army unit to the other, one Israeli army unit to the other. They kept me blindfolded, handcuffed, and they took me to another camp. In that camp, I stayed maybe up until 8 a.m. handcuffed, blindfolded, and they put me on a chair, which was around something like 6-7 hours. With that, after that, maybe around 9:30, 10, they took me to Ofar prison. In Ofar prison, they got me through a whole process of inspections and waitings and identification, etc. Then they got me inside the sections of the prison at around maybe 8 p.m. at night. Of course, all of that period when I'm talking about it, I didn't get a drink of water, something to eat, nothing, all of that time. In Ofar prison, 3 days later, they gave me an order of 4 months of administrative detention that was later shortened to 2 months.
Thanks a lot for your answer. It's very, very interesting. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Israeli judicial system?
Well, the Israeli judicial system is actually a farce. Palestinians are widely prosecuted, criminalized, processed. The feeling of being processed is like when you go into the Israeli judicial system and arrest system, you feel like you're going inside an assembly plant where you are labeled, packaged, assembled, went through this conveyor belt until you get out of the other side. You totally have no control, no say in what's happening to you. You totally have no decision on what kind of violations they do against you. They can come up with any list of charges against you, and it's your responsibility as a defendant to deny those charges. It's not the responsibility of the state to prove those charges. The Israeli criminal system has a conviction rate of 99.76%, which means out of every 100 cases, 99 or every 1,000 cases, less than 3 cases are found not guilty of Palestinians that go through that. That's unheard of anywhere else in the world. You are put inside, they used several different orders. At the beginning, they used against me the orders of administrative detention, which you were being held in a secret, with a secret file against you, and this secret file is closed and you are not allowed to know what the charges are or what you are being held for. And this actually, the administrative detention, this comes as a law from the British mandate. The British mandate left Palestine in 1948 on the 15th of May. On the 14th they left of May. And they had those laws, draconian laws of putting people just on the orders of a military commander under administrative detention. You can stay for administrative detention anywhere between 1 month and 6 months, the first order, and it can be renewed indefinitely. For me, they gave me 4 months of administrative detention. In the 4 months of administrative detention, there was actually a lot of international pressure. A great campaign was done internationally in Belgium, in the States. Videos like the one Apolline and Heidi did, and solidarity statements that was signed by everyone. in the States, for example, Chomsky, George Smith, also, which is a Nobel laureate in chemistry, also signed it. A good number of Israeli academics like Anat Matar and others also signed those statements. So they, because of that kind of pressure, I think they shortened my sentence at first for 2 months of administrative detention, but they really had an urge of transferring me to, of building a case against me. I was in prison then, and people were tortured inside the investigation centers. One of the funniest stories that happened is that someone came inside the section and told me, "I want to meet you, Ubay." And I told him why, and he told me because they got me crazy on asking me about you. And I told him, "I really don't know you." And he was actually one of the people also tortured by the Israelis in the Israeli prison system. And then after the torture, they transferred me into a case. They built some kind of a farce case against me, which was actually bogus charges, and that relied mainly on affidavits taken from people under torture, and which were not even given access to by my lawyer. I hired a lawyer, and he tried to get access to the files, but he was actually denied getting access to the files, to the statements by the evidence, and etc., to be able to do a proper defense of me. In the end, my lawyer asked me what should we do, and I told him that I want to get back to my kids and family in the fastest time possible. So he had this kind of what do you call it, of bargaining with the Israeli district or military attorney, and they gone into an agreement of 1 year and 1 week. And the sentencing, the judge asked in the court, and this is actually my wife was present in it, and she asked, "Why was the 1 week?" Which was totally amazing. She asked in plain sight, "Why the 1 week?" And nobody answered her, and he said, "Okay, 1 week, 1 year and 1 week." So even the judges are just this, just to give you an idea that even the judges there are what do you call it? Are puppets that are everything is being controlled by the Israeli intelligence service.
Thank you for the answer, Ubay. When we met in April 2019, I also met Tarek, who is my age. We are both 30 years old, but he at that point had already been in prison for 4 years, for four times. And he was also re-arrested last year in autumn, so also in October, November. And I know you shared a cell together. So can you explain us a bit more about life in prison? And maybe I know that some attendees also know Tarek. Can you include how he is doing?
Okay, so Tarek is actually, he's one of the people that got tortured. He was subjected to brutal Israeli oppression. He has problems in his back and knees as a result of that oppression. And of course, in Israeli prisons, you are not given access to proper health care or proper medication or proper food. Tarek is in prison life. The Palestinian prisoners, they are prisoners because of the Israeli occupation. You will find in Israeli prisons scholars, PhD professors, people with MDs, medical doctors degrees, people that have their masters, and people that are working from Palestinian civil society, etc., from all sorts of Palestinian society. So in Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prison try to organize their life on being productive, and the most thing that you can be to be productive inside the prison is having your own schedule, of reading a lot, of trying to write something and be educational to other prisoners, etc. Tariq actually was very energetic. The people that know him, you know that he plays a lot of sports, and he continues to do that in prison. He reads a lot, as most prisoners also try to do that. He also tries to teach other prisoners things, like, for example, inside the prison, Palestinians hold courses. One of the things, for example, that we talked about, or we had courses about, is Ilan Pape's book of the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, 1948, which is one of the best books that describes what happened back in 1948 and what's going on until now, of course, the ethnic cleansing. We promote this. Other things that Tariq, for example, he did, because he studied psychology, he did a lot of sessions on how to think positively in life, how to do your own self-program, what's the meaning of life, etc. He's very inspirational for the people around him. I know as many of you know him. Tariq also writes a lot. He writes a lot he tries to write a lot in literature, and he's writing also a lot of essays, and he's trying to be productive in that sense. The main aim of Israeli prison system is to try to render you unproductive, try to render you not caring, not being empathic to the people around you. Palestinian prisoners, because for us as in Palestine, almost it's a fact of life that you might go to prison one day. Since 1967, according to PA statistics, and I think they are relied on the Red Cross for that, around 1,200,000 arrests have been made among Palestinians. Most of these arrests, I'm talking about over 95% of those arrests, are among Palestinian males. So in the age category of males above 20 years old, almost 1 in every 2 Palestinians has been imprisoned by the Israeli by the Israeli military regime of control over the West Bank and Gaza, of course. And when you're taking that consideration into a population of today we have around 5 million Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. And so you're talking almost 1 out of every 2 males. 50% of our population is under 20 years old. So you're talking about almost 1 out of every 2 males above the age of 20 have experienced one form or another of Israeli imprisonment. And this fact of life also has given prisons some of its most wonderful humanists, I think, some of its wonderful people. For example, a lot of Palestinian prisoners are poets. I would say Mahmoud Darwish. Mahmoud Darwish, one of the most important and influential Arab poets, and I think one of the best poets in the world ever, has also experienced Israeli prisons. Not just Mahmoud Darwish, a lot of our Palestinian artists, dancers, philosophers, thinkers, etc., have experienced those. So those peoples, when they are imprisoned, incarcerated, they try to put a system or to light a candle inside the dark, I would say that. And because you have so many, I think the best of the Palestinian society are getting imprisoned. You would have people like astrophysics professor Dr. Ahmed Barghouti, who has a model on his name, who used to work for NASA when he was in the United States, being in administrative detention right now in an Israeli prison. For example, he would give lectures on the birth of the universe, on quantum mechanics, quantum physics, and these kinds of topics. You would find Palestinian prisoners that have spent a couple of years in prison and met so many people having a diverse knowledge because of the quality of the people that they met.
And we also know that, 2020 is also the year of the COVID pandemic. And we know that that Palestinian prisoners face that fear as well. Can you explain a bit how it's happened in Offer prison and in prison in general for Palestinian prisoners?
Well, we started to hear about COVID like everyone else. We hear we have television, we have radios that were actually accomplished as a result of a hunger strike of Palestinian prisoners. So when we started to hear about it and to understand that there's a pandemic, etc., we started to we started to worry about that, worry about the pandemic. The first spark we had was back in, I think, March, because they canceled the family visits, and we were not able to see our families for several months. The last time I visited my entire family was on the 1st of March. After that, I had no visits until my wife came alone in July. For the Israeli prison administration, they kept on denying that there were any COVID cases inside of prison, and they didn't take any precautions for us. We used to hear on television that you need to keep social distancing, which was impossible inside of prison because 8 people, for example, in the section that I lived in, were living in a room that was 3 meters by 12 meters. So the idea of social distancing, that's impossible. The Israeli prison guards, who were the main source of contagion for us, they didn't keep their social distance from us. They mingled with us, entered our rooms every day, did body searches for us. And actually, when we had suspicions that some cases of COVID have developed among prisoners, the Israeli administration denied that until we heard from on the radio that prisoners that were released from Offer were tested positively for COVID-19. The only thing that we were able to do, we were almost given no sanitizers. We were not given masks until later on, around 2 months later, maybe around the end of April or the beginning of May, something like that, when we were given issued masks from the prison administration. And we were not given any sanitizers. And for us, the amazing thing was that foods that increase the vitamin C inside your body, like lemons, like garlic, that boost your immune system, like like onions, which were normally allowed for us to buy in the cantina, or were given to us from the prison kitchen, were denied delivery to all our sections as prisoners. So we felt that there was some kind of targeting for Palestinian prisoners, negligence. We actually had to threaten to go on hunger strikes. We had to take steps on to oppose the policies of negligence from the Israeli prison authority. Those steps included closing the sections on us for all day. That is for us refusing to go out on the daily walks, returning the food and going on hunger strike for 2 or 3 meals and sometimes more, in order to pressure the prison authority to do some changes. After that, after they did all of their policy, or if they finished all of their work, or not all of the work, after all of this pressure from us, and they were able to, or I think they leaned, and they started giving out more sanitizers for us. They allowed some of the healthy food that was deprived from us, like lemons, like garlic, like onions. They allowed it to enter the sections. And a couple of months after that, they even got back families visits. But really on the ground at the beginning of the pandemic, and right in the heights of it in March and April, they did not do any thing to prevent Palestinian prisoners from having COVID-19 or from being able to boost their immune systems or anything able to face this kind of disease.
Thank you, Ubay, for your answer. This is crazy how the guards in the prison are like really trying to dehumanize and target systematically Palestinian prisoners. I also know that everywhere in the world there were like pressure for releasing earlier some prisoners or political prisoners. I mean, in Philippines, in Honduras, or in a lot of different countries, and no single Palestinian prisoner have been released
Yes,
earlier.
they actually did something. They have something that's called administrative release, which is if you are sentenced and you have a certain period remaining in your sentence, you get automatically released from prison. What they did was cancel that for Palestinian political prisoners, and they did some mass releases for Israeli prisoners or criminal prisoners, I would say, that were in Israeli prisons on offenses ranging from stealing, from theft, to high-end crimes like armed robberies and stuff, that had a couple of months left in their sentence. For us, the system of oppression is actually very evident. It's actually evident. You are not treated as a human being inside Israeli prisons. You are treated as an object. You are objectified, dehumanized. You have no rights, and this is something crucial. You have no control over your body. You have no control anything. Any Israeli prison guard can come and do any violation against you. And the only thing protecting you as a Palestinian is the group solidarity that you have with other prisoners, is that the Israeli prison guards know that if they do a violation against one prisoner, they have to face off for the entire prison population, Palestinians, of course. The cases of medical negligence are astounding. I actually attended a workshop before my imprisonment in a couple of months that talked about medical negligence inside of Israeli prisons amounts to torture, because when you are suffering from certain states of prolonged pain, of prolonged suffering, medical conditions that worsen, and you are denied treatment, this amounts to torture. And actually the Israeli occupation has proved itself over the years that it's willing, and not just willing, that it uses systematic torture against Palestinians. Whether it was the case of the prisoners that were tortured in Israeli jails like Tariq and others, most notably, maybe they got admitted that they used torture. The only first case that they admitted that was the case of Sam al-Arbid. And whether it was the cases of mass detentions of children Today, there are around 400 Palestinian children under 18 that are being held in Israeli jails. They are being denied to pursue their education. They are being mistreated. Actually, in Offer prison, where I was at most of the time, the prisoners did a number of, we returned days, we returned our daily meals in objection to the prison authorities' treatment of children prisoners, of their mistreatment of Palestinian prisoners. One example for that is Palestinians, for example, when you are imprisoned, you are not issued any clothes or anything from the Israeli prison administration. And you remain without your clothes, you remain just with what you're wearing until you get your first family visit. And because of the COVID situation, it usually takes around 3 months to get your first family visits. So usually Palestinian prisoners do this kind of solidarity among each other, and they give some clothes from each other, but it's giving from the poor to the poor. It's giving from the poor people that do not have. You might have 2 shirts, and you would give a new prisoner one of your shirts, and you would remain with one. So because the family visits were stopped during COVID-19, Palestinian prisoners, especially prisoners, did not have any access to clothes. So it was one of the only places, I think, around that you had to take, used underwear, used boxers, for example. After washing them, you had to start and stitching them. So you'd have those boxers that were well filled with stitches because you didn't have access to clothes. And on the other aspect, they denied Palestinian prisoners of having needles. And they say it's a security risk for you to have a needle. So what we had for many months, and this is actually, we almost went to hunger strike, open-ended hunger strike in order to get needles. I saw the prison, what do you call it? The Israeli officer in charge of our prison, after almost going to hunger strike and giving us a couple of needles for every section that had around 100 prisoners or more in it. And he's saying, I gave you needles to use in the day, 5 needles, 6 needles to use in the day. And this is like accomplishment. And we told him, what are you talking about? You're crazy. We almost went to hunger strike in order to get some needles to fix the clothes, because you are denying us getting clothes from our families, because you're not giving us any visits. And the situation of Palestinian prisoners is a situation of, from the Israeli side, they're trying to dehumanize you. From the Palestinian side, you're trying to keep up your humanity, keep up your resistance, and keep up your narrative as a Palestinian people trying to get our freedom from, I think, one of the longest occupations in modern times around the world.
Thank you, Ubay. I know also that, I mean, this imprisonment has affected your family, but also the organization you're working in as a director. Can you tell us a bit more how it impacts Bisan and also on the strategies of Israeli apartheid to really harass and target the social movement in Palestine?
Well, my arrest actually was not the only one for people that were active in Palestinian civil society. In the period prior to my arrest, I was very active in trying to expose the Israeli torture of Palestinian prisoners. My arrest actually coincided with the arrest of a number of people from Palestinian civil society and attacks on Bisan Center website, especially. Our website was hacked by an anonymous site. We do not know who, but it coincided with my arrest, of course. And this website, I think Fiona knows that we had just updated a couple of weeks before that, and we had just gotten it going and running. Of course, we do not have the means. We are not a big or a rich organization that can do cybersecurity or cyber tracking of who hacked our website, etc. But we have also our resilience. For the attack on this Palestinian civil society, I think there's an attack on the Palestinian population in general and on our narrative also. The Palestinian civil society is part of the Palestinian society. So those organizations that try to defend Palestinian rights, that try to defend human rights, are also targeted more than others. This targeting, for one example, started with a smear campaign on my name that was done by Israeli right-wing organizations. They started to spread so many lies about me, and I had no control. I didn't even see what they were spreading because I was in Israeli detention and I was cut off from the world. But my family, my wife, my colleagues, friends that I knew from abroad, etc., all of them saw those horrible news being spread, and I had no control on what was being said, and I had no means also of putting those people that were saying such lies about me, my organization, etc., putting them accountable. The spread of those lies, unfortunately, has also affected Bisan's work. Some of the international partners that we were hoping, donors, etc., that we were hoping to work with, that we had good prospects with, I think when they saw the Israeli attacks on Bisan, they chickened out. They backed away from their ethical position. And this has actually affected, of course, the work of Bisan. We rely on funding for our activities. We don't have our own resources. We have, of course, our partners that are solid, like Viva Salud, but others are not so much solid. This, of course, has affected the sustainability of the organization. When I was released last month and I saw the situation, etc., I think we are going through a phase of also hardship. And that this attack also coincided with another attack from, I think, from the European Union. The European Union, for the first time in its history, adopted a so-called quote-unquote terrorism clause. I think this terrorism clause that they are talking about is a political clause. It asks Palestinians to take a political stance against Palestinian parties that are present and part of the Palestinian narrative today. For me, having dual citizenship, Palestinian and US, sometimes I can recall some sayings that one nation might call criminals, other nation might call heroes, and for Palestinians, when the EU comes and without consulting with Palestinians, without talking to them, they try to impose clauses on Palestinians to take a political stance against Palestinian parties that are active in the Palestinian community based on European stances. I think this is not partnership. I think this is also part of the success of the Israeli right wing in promoting its policies abroad, even inside the EU, the European Union. For us as Palestinian organization, we think that being part of the community, being true to our causes, to our message, to our mandate, as being against oppression, trying to achieve justice in Palestine and everywhere in the world. It also has its price. One price for that is trying to it's not one price of that is also in the terms of our operations, that some of the international donor community, etc., will not even share with those values. So I think that unfortunately for us, my arrest also has been a test for how true some of the organizations that work in Palestine are to their mandate. And since my release, I think this is the third webinar that I did, and I also did a statement, just being also self-critical about Palestinian, because I'm part of the Palestinian also civil society. Being self-critical is also, I had also debate, even sometimes spreading the message among Palestinian civil society, because some of the organizations are also afraid of talking about the Palestinian narrative, adopting it. And my conviction, personal conviction, is that when you're talking about the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, which is the policy that's happening since even before 1948 for Palestinians, part of the ethnic cleansing, part of the process is also deleting the Palestinian narrative and replacing it with the right-wing occupation Zionist narrative about Palestine. And this kind of narrative, I think sometimes without knowing, or without, if I want to say, without real awareness to the impacts of their policies, I think that some of the international organizations and countries that work in Palestine trying to do humanitarian work also fall in that category of doing policies or interventions that contribute, I think, to the ethnic cleansing by deleting or denying our story of what's happening and what's happened in Palestine, and replacing it with a different discourse that's totally not true.
Thank you, Ubay. You already mentioned it quite a bit, the importance of international solidarity. Can you maybe share a little bit more your thoughts about it? What is the importance of the need of international solidarity?
Well, international solidarity is, I think, a key aspect, because the case of injustice in Palestine is a case of the global system, how it was formalized back in the days that it was done. After World War II, the UN, in one of its earliest decisions, decided to split Palestine without asking the Palestinian people into two states. And the Israeli state is realized on the ground. And because of that decision and because of the policies, the Palestinians have had their diaspora, and we have had our suffering since then until today. The role of international solidarity, I think it has a double impact. The first impact is that the international community's awareness on what's happening in Palestine can put pressure on the Israeli government and on their local government on that those violations to human rights do not go by unchecked or unaccounted for. Those violations that they do against the Palestinians, against the people that they have occupied, dehumanized for all of those years, will not pass us so lightly. International solidarity actually means that people that are suffering the effects of capitalist expansion in the world, of neoliberal policies, also find something in common to fight against. And this is evident also with the policies that not just the Israelis implement against us, but also the neoliberal policies that are being implemented in Palestine that impoverish people and deny people access to basic human rights such as healthcare, work, education, etc. International solidarity also means that for us as people of the world, we have something together that binds us together a lot more than what differentiates between us. And for me, also as a progressive Palestinian, I see that international solidarity also sends a message, not just for the world, but also for Palestinians, that they are not alone, that there are people from other countries, other ethnicities, other religions that find and stand with what's right and have an ethical stance on Palestine. The Palestinian question, I think, is the most important ethical question of the 20th and the 21st century, because in international, what do you call it, in international politics, you have nothing to gain of standing up with Palestinians. Palestinians have zero sources of power in the world. Zero forces of political power, but we have 1000% of ethical power. So when you're taking a position in Palestine, you are taking an ethical position. You will not get any money from Palestinians. We are a poor people. You will not get any jobs. You will not get any promotions. You might even be fought with right-wing organizations in your country that are closely related to the Israeli system of apartheid that's being practiced on Palestinians, and those kinds of connections we see everywhere around the world, of course, like the connection between the Trump government in the United States and Netanyahu government in Israel. I think they were more than, they were sister governments, much more than any other government in the world. International solidarity, I think, also paves the way for the future. Palestinians back in the 1930s, when they had their biggest revolution against the British mandate demanding their freedom, when they were asked, what do you see the future of Palestine? Palestinians told them, let the people on the ground decide. Let us have a popular democratic vote. No matter on what your religion is, whether you're Christian, Muslim, Jewish, etc. Doesn't matter where you're living, in the city, in the countryside, if you're rich or if you're poor. Let's have democratic elections and decide the future of our country on ourselves. And this was actually a discourse of Palestinians back in the 1930s. And this discourse, of course, was destroyed by the British mandate. And the revolution of Palestinians back in 1936 to 1939 was quashed with intensive violence. And when the issue of Palestine became an international issue back in 1948 because of the diaspora and the Palestinian refugees, etc. Although the UN had its decision of the right of return for Palestinian refugees, but those refugees remain to see their hopes realized of returning to their lands, to their homes that where they were driven out from back in 1948. For me also as a Palestinian that has experienced injustice, I think from day one of realizing what it means to be a Palestinian, from checkpoints, from Israeli occupation. It's also important for me to be part of the international solidarity with other people around the world, whatever their injustice that they might face, whether it was in Bolivia, in Europe, in Britain, in the United States. So we feel a lot of affinity also to the Black Lives Movement. And I know, because I'm following up their news a little bit on social media, that the issue of Palestine is also something that some of activists have also talked about in the Black Lives Matter movement. And when I see progressives like yourself, COMAC, Intel, Viva Salud, etc., and I don't want to miss any organization or anyone from Belgium. I will also feel solidarity with you, because I know that you are also facing your issues in Belgium with the neoliberal policies, etc., that were implemented. And this kind of solidarity, I also feel it with the people from the Philippines. We met, actually, one of the most amazing feelings of me was when going with Fiona to the Philippines and visiting political prisoners and going inside the prison in the Philippines. It was actually like a dream. It was something of a fantasy, and finding myself, of course, in that situation a couple of months later.
That was quite an amazing moment indeed, and amazing
Yes.
people we met.
Of course. So my solidarity also to the comrades in the Philippines.
I'm sure they hear you.
When we met in July 2019, we talked about how we could help as young people to help the Palestinians. And today, every time I want to give fighting, I think about your words and the importance of international solidarity and the power we have as people when we unite. I think everybody should listen to it. And so what should we do to support the Palestinian social movement?
Okay, first of all, the work that COMAC, Intel, and Viva Salud are doing is very important. And I think this kind of work is something that people around the world can also have a lesson from on what they are doing. I think another important issue is the local struggles. I think the stronger and more widespread the knowledge about the issue of Palestine and the interrelations between injustice around the world with the injustice in Palestine, I think that those issues are very important. If you raise public awareness about them, I think that the people, all power to the people, of course, and power to the people. People have the power. They can change the situation if they are aware of it, and if they feel inspired that they can they can change it. And I think that these kinds of connections of finding injustice, raising public awareness about it, being parts of progressive social movements, knowing the links between the issues. So, for example, the link between climate change, neoliberal policies, the capitalist system, and the occupation and the apartheid system that's being practiced in Palestine, how those issues are related. I think that people's knowledge about that is important. For us in Palestine, it's important to have the connections. You know, Israelis try to isolate us from the progressives around the world. They try to do, I would say, something like a scare tactic. They would go and shout terrorist, they would go and shout criminal, and they would go and shout terrorist sympathizer, or etc., trying to scare people around the world from getting involved and being aware of what's happening in Palestine. But I think people today have become much more knowledgeable about the policies and the practices of right-wing, I would say, governments, right-wing apartheid systems against the people, against their solidarity. But on the other aspect, I think it's also important for Palestinians or not just for Palestinians, it's important for Palestinians and for people everywhere around the world that are experiencing injustice to feel the connection. We are a majority around the world, the people that are experiencing injustice. We are more than the 99%. We might be the 99.99% around the world. And having connections between us, tearing down borders and walls, being able to work together moving beyond ethnicity, moving beyond religion, moving beyond nationality. I think this is just the way forward, not just for Palestinians. This is the way forward for everyone around the world. Our current mode of production of capitalist, neoliberal mode of capitalist production doesn't have a way forward except for fascism. And fascism does not mean the destruction just of certain economies or impoverishment of the people. It means actually that their only solution to the global crisis is continued warfare and driving the planet to the disaster. And this is the heritage of capitalism. If we want to go forward, we have to move beyond that. The issue of global warming, the issues of poverty, the issues of injustice around the world, they are all interconnected. And I think one of the main things that's happening in the past few years is that progressives around the world are realizing the connections between that. And those kinds of connections, if you mobilize, if you pressure your government, for example, in Belgium, also you have the European Parliament, I think they're also in Brussels, or I think it's also an establishment that needs a lot more tackling, maybe a lot of more signing petitions, etc., talking to them about issues. Those kinds of mobilizations will help also, will lead in the medium and long run to changes. For example, I can take the lessons from the United States, not the rise of Joe Biden, of course. We do not have much confidence in Joe Biden, but we are glad that Trump left, but we do not have much confidence in Joe Biden. But the rise of the Social Democrats. I never thought in my life that I would hear an American politician calling himself socialist. And this has happened. So if this happened in the States, I think that, and it's gaining traction in the States, and Palestinians, for example, today in Congress, and not just Palestinians, Congress people are saying that we are with PDS, like Ilhan Omar. I think this opens also a way forward for the entire people of the world. That change can happen everywhere if it happened in the States. And this kind of change relies on people doing groundwork, grassroots, mobilization, organization, and raising awareness.
Thank you, Ubay. I just looked in the question and answer to Q&A, and I don't see any questions from our other attendees. So if they do have any question, I would ask them to post it now. Yeah, I'm glad you also touched on America, because I think it's absolutely crucial that policy in the United States changes to get anything to move in Palestine. And I think you probably agree with that. Although a global solidarity movement could also really push an agenda, but inshallah, one day we will be further along in our battle. So I really want to thank Ubay for talking to us. I thought it was really interesting. I learned a lot of things, and I'm really glad to see you in good health. I'm really sorry that you had to spend that time in prison, but I am really happy we got a chance to talk, and yeah, also to have some news from Tarek, and also yeah, just to see that prison absolutely did not kill your spirit. Yeah, I think that's really important. You just said that it's that BDS will be a part of the struggle to free Palestine. And just for the people who maybe don't know what BDS is, BDS stands for Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions. So it's actually a global movement of solidarity where we ask our governments or companies to disinvest from Palestinian, from Israeli companies. We ask our governments to impose sanctions as long as Israel doesn't respect the Palestinian human rights. And we ask for a boycott of Israeli goods. So at the moment in Belgium, we have a campaign going, a BDS campaign. This is called the AXA campaign. AXA is a very big bank and assurance company in Belgium and also in the rest of Europe that actually at the moment invests in a few Israeli banks and also has some shares in Elbit Systems, which is one of the most important and biggest Israeli weapon companies. So we are asking AXA to disinvest from these companies and to give a clear signal that that they and their clients do not support the Israeli apartheid system, because the Israeli banks, they invest in the colonies that are built, the settlements that are built on Palestinian ground. We still need signatures for our pledge, for our campaign. So if any of our attendees did not sign the petition, please do. We are aiming to have 10,000 signatures in Belgium by tomorrow. So it's really important that you sign. And if you can also diffuse, send the petition to other people if you didn't do that already. But I absolutely want to thank Ubay again, and also Apolline, Heidi, and Fiona for organizing this webinar with me. I'll quickly check if there are any questions in the
Well,
Q&A.
there are 3, Ruth.
Okay.
So let me try to answer some.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The second one is in French. I don't know if someone can translate it and type it. I will also answer it, or translate it to me after I answer the first one. From Sudan, in academia, how do you counter effectively this notion that there is no connections between different struggles, Black Lives Matter, indigenous movements, and Palestine? Well, actually, in real life, there's a lot of connections in that. And in academia, you have to look beyond the current national borders in order to understand those connections. For example, I've been part of La Via Campesina movements, talks, etc. around the world, and I followed up on the works of, if you don't know what La Via Campesina is, it's the most prominent peasants, rural peasants movement that's organizing around the world. La Via Campesina, for example, one of the things that they did was trying to globalize the struggle against the policies that are being implemented on a global scale. And for me, this is understandable if you try to analyze and analytically the world as an entire system. If you try to just focus on each country and you are dealing with different countries that have no interconnections between them, that they do not affect each other, then you will not find those connections. So you really have to look for the world as what's in common between them, what's in common between the oppression of the blacks and colored people in the United States, of indigenous peoples movements in North, South America, and around the world, not just there, also in Africa and all around the world. And the issue of Palestine. These connections actually were present, the issues of indigenous people, the issues of minorities, the issues of women, not just those issues, not just the issues of indigenous people and ethnicity. Those all arose as a result of the current mode of production around the world, of the current capitalist system that's is put in place. It was also a result of the current world system. If you look, for example, on how those atrocities that happened against indigenous people or against the blacks in the United States, you would find that capital accumulation, or against Palestinians, you will find that capital accumulation was a main factor, a driving force in that. For us in Palestine, the issue of Palestine was actually done as a result of European, I would say, expansion of colonization around the world. The idea of separating the eastern part and the western part of what is known as the Arab world and North Africa, of putting a separation between that, was actually presented by Napoleon Bonaparte back in the 18th century. And the idea of connections also between the Palestinians and the struggles of Palestinians trying to steadfast on their land, trying to have the right of return also to their land from the occupation, and trying to live as human beings. Also has a lot of connections with the struggles of the Black Lives Matter, the indigenous movements. One last thing that I want to say, in this period that I was in prison, I got to read the autobiographies of Malcolm X, Nelson Mandela, and Huey P. Newton, which is one of the founders of the Black Panthers Party in the States. And what I found is that not just only there were similarities between the struggles of Palestinians and theirs, but also there were similarities in their experience on the imprisonment system, on the disenfranchisement system, and of the judicial system in the three contexts. So yes, there are a lot of connections, and I think Fiona would also like to elaborate on this a little bit more.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Ubay. So, as Ruth said, there is indeed action to do in Belgium, and I did sign the pledge to boycott AXA. So, please do it. So, concretely, Viva Salud is part of a platform that calls Defend the Defenders, where Intel is also participating too. And so, Defend the Defenders, as the name it's explaining itself, is a platform that is trying to defend human rights defenders all around the world and stand in solidarity with them, because social movements in Colombia, in Philippines, in Palestine, in Guatemala, and in a lot of different countries around the world are experiencing more and more pressure and political pressure. Even more now with the COVID, because some authoritarian regimes are instrumentalizing the pandemic and the lockdown to put more pressure on social movements. And so this has happened everywhere. And as Ubay mentioned earlier, it's also something we experience in Europe at a different level. I mean, we heard on Monday that Thierry Baudson from the FGTB has been charged because of his work as trade unionist, which is completely amazing and horrible. And so more than ever, social movements and human rights defenders need solidarity, needs the people they are defending, that these people stand with them. And so that's the aim of this platform, among a lot of different solidarity platforms in Belgium, in Europe, and all around the world. And so the main action of the platform is on the 10th of December. Why the 10th? It's because it's the International Day of Human Rights. And so usually we go on the street, we have a lot of action, but hey, it's COVID. And so there is lockdown, and so everything is happening online, which is nice because we can talk with Ubay, but it's also a bit disappointing sometimes because we love going on the street and put pressure. But so this time, the platform is asking to anyone. So I'm asking to the 30 participants of this webinar to participate to a photo challenge. So mainly it's like take a picture of yourself with your hand on your mouth and write a message that I wrote like during the webinar, write a message, an hashtag or something that supporting human rights defenders all around the world. And so this picture will be collected until the 5th of December. And so please go on the chat and check the link that my colleague Nikki put earlier to see all the different aspects for the picture, and send it to the Defenders 2020 email address. Like this, we can collect the picture and we can have we can share them through a good visual on the 10th of December. It's not only Belgian people, it's also Palestinians, Filipinos, Colombian friends, all around the world experiencing pressure. So that's the moment also to put pressure on our governments, because they are also responsible of this kind of pressure, or participating to pressure through treaties, to economical policies that have a direct impact on farmers, that have a direct impact on indigenous people or human rights defenders, as in Palestine. So please go on the chat and check both the pledge and the pledge to boycott AXA and the action for the 10th of December. Maybe before going to the next action to do, we can take another question. I see the question of Ben. That is, I think, from the family of Ale. That's nice. My mom is also watching the webinar. So Ben is asking if what's happening to you in prison, how it impacts your work as human rights defenders, and how it really impacts your further action against the Israeli regime.
Well, for me, it's being part of prison has a lot of impact on myself, especially on my family. My kids had to deal with the trauma of not having me part of their daily lives. I was very much involved in the lives of my kids and my family life before my imprisonment. And my wife actually used to face a lot of questions. I think she documented some of those issues in her writings. She's a wonderful person and writer, and I think she slept with the kids right now. She went to get them to sleep, and but I encourage you all to review her works. Maybe you can see some of that. For me, resistance is existence. It's you have one of two options: either to say that you want to cower behind and be afraid of trying to standing up to your beliefs, standing up to what you think is right, and then you will not remain the same person. You will be changed, or trying to keep on the fight, keep on the struggle, trying to stay pushing forward and trying to give inspiration to others to keep on the struggle. My suffering, if I want to compare it to the suffering of my people, although it might be grave, a lot that happened to me in my family, in my work, etc., but it's less than a drop in the ocean to the suffering of the Palestinian people, the Palestinian mothers, friends, etc., people that I know and love and look around me. And I truly believe that if you ask me, will this hinder me, etc., my honest hope is that whatever suffering that I might go through will actually try to bring a better future for my kids to live in, and a better future for the world altogether. Because I truly believe that if our generation doesn't stand up and try to tackle injustice here in Palestine and around the world, from the issues and the threats that we are facing now, maybe in 20 or 30 years, we will have a catastrophe around the world that will impact not just the daily lives of human beings, but of the entire future of humanity as a whole. And this is not just discourse, this is not just ideology I'm talking about. This is actually based on true scientific research and analysis of the current state of affairs that the world is going through, whether it was global warming, whether it was poverty, which is worsening around the world, whether it was disenfranchisement, whether it was militarism, fascism. All of those threats are threats to humanity, to humanity's very own existence. One small example is like, look at how much change Trump administration was able to do. It's not like the previous US administrations were much better, but I think that the amount of fascist changes that were brought around by Trump, near catastrophe brink policies. If you look, for example, the treaties of nuclear disarmament between Russia and the US, which Trump totally ignored and totally did not renew. So what the world was looking for, if he had 4 more years of a new nuclear arms race around the world. I don't know how much the nuclear powers need the nuclear heads, how many times you need the nuclear heads to destroy the world. I think now they can destroy the world 100 times over and they would still have weapons left for. I don't know why this craziness is around. And I think that without the struggles of the people, without finding connections among us, we will not be able to carve out a better future for our children, for ourselves, and for humanity in large.
Thank you, Ubay. I really believe that, I really share everything you said. I really believe that it's really important to raise awareness among population, to, as an individuals, to read, to learn more, but also do this step to organize yourself in a movement, in groups that could be in your community, where you're living, in your village, in your municipality, that could be in a movement at university, as COMAC, as other movement. It could be in a movement as Intel or as climate movement or feminist movements. I think it's really important to be together and to be organized with other people, to be a collective. And then as a collective, to really be mobilized, to mobilize other people and to put pressure in order to really have change, concrete change. And I really believe it's possible. I know that in Europe and in Belgium, sometimes many people feel that they don't have the power to change. But as Ubay said, people have the power. And I really believe that it's true. People have the power. The government, it's us. We are the people. We are the state. So at one point, we really need to organize, to mobilize, and to push for more social justice, for more equality, for more justice at all. And I think it starts with what you know at your local level, but every struggle are connected. And as Ubay said, all the system is impacting everyone around the world. So all the struggle are connected. And if you do something in Belgium, it's you're supporting the Palestinian struggle. If you support with solidarity the Palestinian struggle, you do something for the struggle in Belgium. So I really believe it's important to be organized and mobilized. And please don't hesitate to contact us or other organization. It's really important. So that was my stand. And then there is this week, it's also the week of the against the violence against women. That's a huge issue in Belgium, but also everywhere around the world, and also in Palestine. So I will give the floor to Apolline to Apolline to give a small explanation about a really interesting webinar that will happen next week.
Yeah, so COMAC is in all the universities in Belgium, and the section of Louvain-la-Neuve, COMAC Louvain-la-Neuve, with Viva Salud, is organizing a webinar about feminism around the world on the 30th of November. So the guests will be 4 superwomen. For the Democratic Republic of Congo, it will be Sylvie Luzala Silvundudi. It's the president of the National Management Committee of the organization Étoile du Sud. For the Philippines, there will be an activist from the organization Gabriela. For the Palestine, it will be Dalia, a feminist activist of the Palestinian Movement Youth Committee. For the Belgium, it will be Françoise de Smet from the PTB politician. It's a PTB politician, politician PTB. She's head of the group of the Brussels Parliament. And as today, if you don't understand English, there will be translators present who will translate simultaneously to French to English.
Thank you, Apolline. So please check the registration link in the chat to register and to participate to this very interesting discussion. I know Ubay met some people from Gabriela organization
Yes.
in Philippines. That was a good. I mean, they are really amazing, and the same for Étoile du Sud and for Dalia. I know also that it was this weekend that we organized some demonstration in Palestine as well for asking the liberation of all women prisoners.
Yes, and actually the violence against women in Palestine has two aspects. One is the occupation, and the other is the violence internally from the patriarchal Palestinian society. And we at BISAN, we actually stand against both kinds of violence, and we work with other organizations. We in the Coalition to End Violence Against Women to expose the means and the reasons and the methods of this violence against Palestinian women.
Yes, thank you. I have a thought for many Palestinian prisoners, women Palestinian prisoners, Khalida, Hitam, that have been arrested and experiencing the same things that you have talked earlier. So thank you also to, I mean, I have a thought for Hint, your amazing wife, amazing writer. I put the link to her Facebook page in the chat. Like this, you can follow her and follow her writings because she's an amazing woman and she has been really a real hero for me since I know her. Fighting for her family, for the liberation of her husband, for her activism, for her work. So really admire her a lot. So please follow her and write and read her writings. I think that we are slowly coming to the end of this very interesting discussion. I would like to really thank Ruth, Apolline, and Ada for helping for the preparation of this webinar and for like all the questions they asked today. That was really lovely to be all together because I mean, not just now, but also all the year, they really worked hard for solidarity, stand with Ubay and with also other prisoners, and they are also very active on Palestine. So thank you. I would like to thank as well the translators because I mean, you don't see them, but they are really important. So thank you, really. Thank you to my colleague Nikki, that is also not on the first line, but he's also doing all the technical stuff that are really annoying to do sometimes. And to all participants that stay here for the discussion. And please do on Facebook and share the lives in order that more and more people can have access to this discussion. And finally, a huge thanks to Ubay for your testimony. It was super strong as usual. And I every time I speak with you, I feel all the energy and the strength that you have inside of you. And that's something common with many Palestinian human rights defenders that I met. So I have a huge thoughts for all of the human rights defenders in Palestine that are struggling for liberation of the country, against colonization, against apartheid, against ethnic cleansing. And we will always remain in solidarity with all of them, with the Palestinian social movement, until we will win and until Palestine will be free. So thank you, Ubay, and thank you all for attending to this webinar. I don't know, Ubay, if you want to give the last word of the webinar.
Well, my last words is thank you for everyone. Thank you, Fiona, for your great work. Apolline, Heidi, Ruth, everyone from Viva Salud, Comac, Intel, everyone. Thanks everyone for the solidarity. In the end, I would say that all power to the people. People have all the power. You have the future. We are the many. They are the few. And globalize the struggle.
Thank you. Good evening to all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Maybe Theo, before everyone goes, there was a great suggestion in this chat that maybe all 5 of us can hold our hands and take a screenshot for Defend the Defenders.
Okay. So
Okay.
let's all.
I already wrote my hands. Not very clear, but we can try.
So.
I don't have a pen right now, but
There's 2, and then the others, just the hand, it's good.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And regards to Hind and the kids that are already sleeping, I hope so. And
thank you.
And let's continue the struggle.
Let's continue all.
All the power to people.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.